Are you going to do the intro, Kim?
Well, good morning and good evening, world. We are IBM.TV Financial Friday. I am your host, Kimberly Calhoun, and our other great expert in financial fitness, Nick Palaveda. He's our senior executive producer of IBM.TV. Welcome to Financial Friday, where we are going to introduce you to some financial experts to help us become financially fit. Are you ready, Nick?
Yeah, I'm ready. We're going to add some of our regulars to the team. We're going to add Sasha Starr, who does our investment show on Wednesday from Toronto, Canada. Welcome to the show again, Sasha.
Thank you.
And to our investor in emeritus investor, Jim Eade, who runs the Chess Without Borders show. And we're going to bring in our special guest from Bismarck, North Dakota, John Power, CPA. John, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
Okay, John, can you tell us a little about who you are and where you're from?
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm from Bismarck, North Dakota. I have a CPA firm here. I'm also a certified tax strategist and a certified virtual family office professional. My practice focuses primarily in tax planning for closely held businesses and their owners, also real estate investors who may be faced with large gains, situations like that. Been in practice for just over 40 years now.
Oh, 40 years. So this isn't your first rodeo then, eh?
No.
Right. Okay. So you actually work with small business owners out of Bismarck and
Really all over the
Dakota area. Pardon?
All over the country, yeah.
Oh, you work with them all over the country. Okay, now you're speaking to my tune. Okay. Now, a lot of the people listening are, of course, all over the country and all over the world. But tax planning is something very important, especially when you're like Sasha in Toronto and he makes a lot of money doing his trades. We hear them every day. Jim doesn't have such a problem. Wait, he's got royalties from his book, Chess for Dummies, so there it is. It's actually published all over the world. How many languages is that in, Jim, right now?
I lost count after 8.
Okay, after eight areas, okay. And Sasha and I go over his latest and greatest trade in General Electric right now, where he tries to make his $45,000 a day. He thinks that's a good, reasonable rate of return. So what sort of tax strategies can small business owners do right now?
Oh, there's really all kinds. It varies depending on the type of business and things like that. But there's a lot that aren't ever considered. We've done some things with a number of things with IC discs for example, where businesses have export sales. That's a huge potential tax saving tool that they have. And many times businesses don't even think about that they have export sales, because export sales can include not only something that for example, I sell directly to somebody in China, but indirect sales, using it for an example, in our area, a grain elevator may sell soybeans to a company like Cargill or whoever, and you think, okay, that's not an export sale, but they know, depending on where they're shipped. For example, they go to the port in the Northwest, they're going to China or Asia someplace. So those kind of sales count. So many times people just don't, think about how they might apply. There's just a variety. R&D credits are very often overlooked. And then there's things that, have been around for a while, but again, aren't often considered or used in the ways they can be, like cost segregation studies. It really varies, so much depending on the kind of business.
Okay. Yeah. We have another person who's just joined us from the Salt Lake City area, Max Culiet, who's a certified financial planner, registered investment advisor, and also with National Pension Partners. Max, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone.
Okay,
Welcome
could you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Oh, well, I own my own financial services firm, One Financial Advisors, as well as National Pension Partners. And I've been in the financial services business for 37 years. I have a CFP and a whole lot of alphabet soup. I have been in management roles. I've been in home office roles as regional officer. But the last 20 years, I've really just been on my own, and I worked with Principal for 19 years, but worked with Nick and have for quite a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know that guy.
Yeah.
And
Now, John is from North Dakota. Don't we have a friend who's also in the North Dakota area, or in Dakota, Max?
Oh,
He's with One America now, I believe.
yeah, I've got to remember his name.
Yeah, Wade. It's Wade, isn't it?
Yes, Wade Borth.
Wade Borth. Is he in Bismarck or another city there?
Name doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, Wade Borth. Okay, well, I'm not sure if he's in Bismarck. He may be in another city in North Dakota. So John, you're in Bismarck, North Dakota, and you work all over the country doing tax strategies. How do you do that? Work all over the country out of Bismarck?
Well, my practice has always been kind of strange in that most of my clients are not located in Bismarck. That's just kind of how my practice developed years ago. I used to kind of jokingly say that 90% of my clients have never been in my office. That's maybe not quite as true anymore. In the old days, it was phone and eventually email. Now it's we do a lot of things via email and still phone, of course, and Zoom meetings. Zoom meetings are becoming very, very, very common.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you operate like through the internet then in terms
Right.
of meeting with your clients. Now, the taxes are very important for people that are making money. The other day we had a conversation with one of our doctors that said that the doctors and the dentists are hurting. Are you seeing that because of COVID-19 that the incomes of people are down right now in 2020?
What I'm seeing is it really varies by industry. Certainly any personal service kind of business, doctors maybe not quite as much. Dentists certainly were, because their business, their practice is just shut down. The things like the PPP loans, help somewhat. Some of them, may have applied for the economic injury loans through SBA. But those kind of businesses, we're along with things like restaurants and bars and things like that, were really hit hard. Mm-hmm. In North Dakota, we were knock on wood, been very fortunate. The COVID virus has not been a huge issue. I mean, it certainly exists here, and it's something we try to be careful about. But it's not as widespread or as devastating as larger cities.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Let's talk because we got business shows that we do as well. So maybe we can get you to come and work with us on some of the business shows for some strategic ideas, because this is very important when you're planning your business to plan in some of the tax advantages that you can get. How would you advise someone in doing, say, international trade? I've never done of international, but I'm working on building into that. What are some good tax advantages and strategies that you can advise someone? I'm first off going to advise people not to do it on their own, like to go out and seek some consultant like you. But what are some good things that we could look at in doing something like that?
Again, if you're doing some sort of export business, the IC disc is just a huge one, and especially. Some of the attractiveness has gone away now that we have, the lowest tax rates we've had in a long time, and so there's not quite as much difference between ordinary income and dividend income, but it can still be significant. I think the point that you make about not doing it yourself is, really, it's finding somebody who has the resources. I mean, I'm not an IC-DIS expert. I'm not an R&D credit expert. But through the organizations that I'm active in, I have access to those specialists who really give best-in-class services in those areas. And so it's really finding somebody and asking the questions so that you can get access to the people that will help you with those particular kind of questions.
Well, because the laws change every year, right? I mean, it's not easy to maintain and understand what I can do legally and what I can't do. I mean, it changes every year. So it's good to have a team of people, not that work in this area to guide you and help you set it up right. And the worst thing to do is to get it set up and go, darn it, I didn't do that. And there's some great tax benefits out there. So.
Yeah, and I think the unfortunate thing is that most, I'm going to use the word CPA as a kind of a generic term for tax professionals, but most CPAs are not focused on tax planning. They're very focused on compliance. They're doing hundreds, maybe thousands of tax returns. They just simply don't have time to research and evaluate, do due diligence. There's a lot of really bad ideas out there too. And several years ago, I kind of had what I call an epiphany, is because I realized that on one hand, we have, the clients who say, if there's something I should do, my CPA will tell me. And on the other hand, you have the CPAs that say, if my client has a question, he'll ask. And both of those are reasonable assumptions, but neither side knows there's kind of this giant chasm between them. And so what I try to do in my practice is bridge that chasm and bring proactive ideas to my clients and to the prospects that I meet.
Yeah, and you said some very interesting things. IC-DISC, which, from what I understand, DISC stands for the Domestic International Sales Corporation. What does IC stand for?
Interest charge.
Interest charge domestic international.
One of the options,
right,
with the IC-DISC is you don't have to pay the commissions; you can defer them, and then what you do for that right is you pay a little bit of interest. That's why it's called an interest charge.
And also R&D tax credits are another strategy. Now, what can Sasha do, who, as an investor, and what he likes to do is trade stocks and make money off stocks? I've always found that these people to be very challenging. But is there anything that people like Sasha could do as part of a tax strategy?
Obviously, without knowing specifics about them, I can generalize, but if you're trading like that, you're probably treated as a trader, and so your income is ordinary income. You're not usually getting capital gain income. So then it really falls into all the things that would apply to almost anybody in a trader business. Retirement plans, are still a very viable strategy, especially now with the change from the CARES Act, where we can, or I guess maybe it was even before the CARES Act, it was last year, where we can set them up, in the following year. I mean, Nick, you guys are pension guys. I worked with pensions for almost 40 years. I mean, can you imagine how many plans you would have sold over the last 40 years?
Yeah,
if you could set them up the following year.
Hey, asking, hey, can we set up plans for 2012? Well, Max, since you do a lot of pensions, and we know the Secure Act took place, I was about to email you before this to find out, because I need more information on the Secure Act for Northeastern University, because I got to add another module to the graduate tax program. What's going on with the Secure Act and all the changes in pensions?
Well, it's changed a lot because some of the contributions can now be put off to the end of the year. So if you set up your pension last year and had it, ready to function, instead of having to fund by September 15th, you can now fund at the end of the year, December 31st, which is a new deal with what's going on right now with the COVID thing and everything else. But the CARE Act, the biggest thing it did was it opened up the retirement plans market. It extended funding periods to age 72 for a lot of things, and R&Ds to age 72. It didn't really change the world of 401k profit sharing plans much. And it didn't change pensions a whole lot. It mostly changed the way individuals could take income, could deal with what they're doing.
Yeah. Now it brings me to another question because of the fiduciary rule.
Changed.
Yeah. The thing is, are you a fiduciary or not a fiduciary, or where does that fiduciary rule stand right now when you work in the area of pensions?
Well, because I am a CFP, my CFP rules state that I'm a fiduciary at all times whenever I give any kind of financial advice. So if someone says, hey, should I buy term insurance? And I answer that question, technically I'm a fiduciary. So it changes that world. What the fiduciary rules are really doing, which I have mixed emotions about because I'm somewhat of a fan that they should be there in existence, is they provide a framework that financial advisors are supposed to always act in their client's best interest versus their interest. And a lot of financial advisors do have conflicts of interest. There are financial advisors that work for, shall we say, captive companies, whether they be strictly investments or strictly insurance or a blend, more of a hybrid of the two. And in those settings, those companies put out requirements and say you need to do X amount of business volume with, perhaps they even say, these specific products, these that we manufacture and these that we provide on more of an open platform brokerage basis. And what the Fiduciary Act really does is say that in all cases, you're supposed to, one, disclose to your client if you have conflicts of interest, but ultimately act in the client's best interest at all times. And so what that's done is it created a lot of internal conflict with those advisors that are trying to do things right. And then a fear from the advisor standpoint, how am I going to be judged on what is best for my client? It's just going to be a look in the rearview mirror judgment, because it's always easier to look at what happened back there and have 20/20 vision versus looking ahead and trying to judge what's going to be the best in specific circumstance. And so that creates a conflict. The plus to it is that it should motivate most financial advisors to do the things that are good for the client. Now, here's my other side of the coin that I feel is a big negative. The Fiduciary Act really is regulating people who are securities licensed, certified financial planners. CPAs already had it to a degree, but if a CPA holds a securities license, it's going to change their world because it's going to be much more, open to litigation. The thing that I don't like that it hasn't done is there's a group of financial advisors that are insurance-only advisors that put all kinds of labels out there on themselves. Now, some of those are going to be cut off because of state regs relating to the fiduciary rules and because of the SEC, FINRA, and DOL regs. And that is that they can no longer represent themselves as a financial advisor unless they're truly functioning as that. So that's going to limit their ability to do some of the things that they've done in the past. But at the same time, those tend to be the people that, shall we say, violate or infringe on fiduciary standards in a not so positive way more often than advisors who are licensed. And I'll pick on me for an example. Had a client come in and we had a discussion. I asked, it was an older lady that had been part of a retirement plan years ago that I had, and I retained her to help her. And so she's come in and she wants advice and she's got some issues. And I asked her, to bring in someone as a person of interest. And I think that's becoming more and more important in this fiduciary world. And at first she says, what do you mean by a person of interest? A lady that had been part of a retirement plan years ago that I had. Are your kids? We paid her to help her. What, am I repeating or something?
Oh, what happened is somebody turned on their IBM TV thing, and we're on a 3-second delay. And so what happens, you heard yourself on the 3-second delay. So if you make any mistakes, so for those people who are new to
I get to hear it again.
well, no, what happened because our director out of New Delhi, Ankit, is backstage in New Delhi. He has 3 seconds to bleep us if you say something that's bad. But so anyway, that's okay. So if you say something wrong, we got 1, 2, 3 because we're live, and then he's got to bleep it and move on. And so that's what you're hearing. Yeah,
so anyway, I had a second meeting with her. She brought in her daughters, and I kind of reviewed everything and went through everything. Well, then we started doing paperwork to make a few changes. And her daughter says, I don't have enough time. How much longer is this going to take? And I said, I'm only halfway done getting the paperwork printed out. That's going to have to be signed. So what the fiduciary acts have done is it took, and my son mentioned this a few years ago. I reviewed everything and went through everything. He said, I see that we started doing paperwork to make a few changes, and they were like 7 or 8 pages. I look at what you have now, and they're 20 to 30 pages. Well, today, they're not 20 to 30 pages. They're like 40 or 50 pages.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And because of the additional disclosure. So that creates more work on the advisor. Honestly, I think more confusion, but also it's going to cause advisors to do things like I did with this lady. I asked her to bring in other people, and we filled out some forms and letters of intent to say these are people who are persons of interest, because that gives me permission to share with them, but also someone that, again, is going to look over my shoulder, which is easier to do because I'm in my formal dining room at home. My office is still in disarray. If you're wondering what happened to my office there, Nick, at home, because it's the holiday for the 4th of July and the markets are closed.
Right.
So anyway, that's part of what it's going to do. Now on the retirement plan side, it's going to turn into fiduciaries a lot of the advisors to 401k, profit sharing plans, things like that. And that's going to become more challenging for some of them, because it used to be if a employee of this company comes and asks you an investment question, you can give some general advice and there's no repercussions. Now you're a fiduciary, so the advice you give is as a fiduciary to that employee. So you can't just say, well, yeah, it's good to have this. You've now got to say, tell me more about yourself, find out about their circumstances so that you can give a more complete answer, which is good, but it's going to load more onto that advisor. And it also then loads more onto the business owner, which I don't think the business owners realize. Because the business owner, when you sponsor a retirement plan, you become the plan fiduciary as well. And so that's where it's going to be important to have investment policy statements and a lot of things that they may not have done before, especially in the small plans, because in those plans, you're seeing more litigation because the employees come back and say, wait a minute, we don't think we were given a good opportunity to invest in the right kinds of investment. Therefore, how do you justify that you chose the right kind of investments for a 401k plan? Now, pensions are different, because the owner has a different responsibility. In a pension plan, that business owner, who is still the fiduciary, and they are technically the plan administrator, they now need to make sure that they have a selection of investments within their pension plan that doesn't cause a lot of volatility, that makes sure the plan is currently funded, but it's not doing too well, because the rules say that it can't do too well. So they've got to hit this narrow little margin. And what it's going to require them to do is kind of look over the shoulder of the investment advisor they're working with, or financial advisor, to say, are we choosing the right kind of investments? And that's why, frankly, I think it aids to the argument of let's do fully insured plans, because a fully insured plan, you don't have all the investment risks and all the other issues that you're going to have in the more traditional plans. Right. And that's why we've talked about it. You have companies like FedEx and General Motors, and I forget who else now, but there's
Verizon. They converted, right?
Yeah, they have converted their traditional defined benefit plan investments and brought in large volumes of guaranteed annuities from these large insurance companies.
Right.
They sell what are called GIC, or guaranteed,
Investment contracts.
income contracts, and in an annuity platform. And they're doing that because they don't want to have the market exposure. Now, that was probably a good idea for the ones that did it in, the last year or two. But if they did it this year, it might have been a little late.
Yeah. John, do you see the fiduciary rule affecting your CPA practice at all in Bismarck? Do you have fiduciary issues?
Not really so much. It always kind of blows my mind a little bit that there's this huge controversy over requirement to act in the client's best interest. It's coming from primarily a CPA perspective. It just kind of is a given that's how you act. And so to hear the controversy that about that, and I understand Max went actually did a good job of talking about some of the pluses and minuses there, but in the broad picture, how else do you act except in the client's best interest? I think it does create some opportunities for advisors. Max kind of described some of the differences, especially with perhaps insurance only. If I was an active financial advisor, I have an RIA and I do a little bit with a few clients. But that would be a question I would be asking, prospective clients is, does the person you work with, will they agree in writing to act in your best interest? And if the answer is no,
then whose interest are they acting in for?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes a big difference.
And I think really the same way in the 401k world,
right?
It's kind of a little bit like tax planning. It's when somebody asks that general question, they want a quick answer. You're not going to give as good advice as if I sit down and do a tax plan for them. And so you really have some of the same opportunities, I think, as an advisor to a 401k plan, that you can. There's certainly the potential that you will be able to do more work with those clients just because of the requirements Max talked about. You're going to spend some more time talking to them, and I think that opens up opportunities.
Right. Yeah. For those
one thing for John, because I do a lot of CPA, CPE courses and stuff, and have for dang near 20 years. Here's my perception on the CPA world, having talked to a lot of them, is maybe in the past they didn't know about pensions, as an example, which is one area it seems that a lot of them tend to be a little more weak. They're going to have to know more to be a good fiduciary, because I did a CPA CPE group for the UACPA here in Utah this past summer. And as I spoke at that meeting and did so for about an hour, we got into that whole discussion about different kinds of pensions and why one might be good in what situation. And a couple of the CPAs, well, I just, told my clients to do cash balance plans because they sounded kind of hot, like they might be a good deal. And then I did, we kind of went back and rehearsed that a little bit. And after our discussion, they both sat there and said, geez, we shouldn't have probably done that for these clients, because these were clients who were in their mid to late 50s. The structure probably, I would not have recommended a cash balance plan. They don't have enough time to make up for mistakes, because there's a plus to a cash balance pension plan that you have 7 years to fix a problem once you do it without creating big penalties. But it's easier as we get older to have what I call triggering events: a disability, a divorce, what happens, a need to retire early, you decide to sell the business because this hot offer came on your desk. And those create triggering events, so you may not have the time to fix the problem over that 7-year period, or underfunding or overfunding. And so it becomes much more cumbersome. So I think that's what it's going to do for CPAs in a way, is a lot of CPAs do really focus on trying to do the right thing and do everything, but it's now going to become one that they've got to perhaps get a little higher level of education on a question and say, let me do some research. And then it's going to be, and this is where I run into the problem, is the client willing to pay for the time it takes to do the research, to provide them the best answer, most complete answer that can allow you to do the best job for them.
Usually I say the answer is no, because they go, well, that's your job. You should already know that. For those of you joining us late and then half an hour in the program, this is the IBM TV Network Financial Friday. We have Kim Calhoun from the Raleigh-Durham area, a entrepreneur, CEO, and also sits on the board at North Carolina State University for Computer Science. We have also as a panelist Jim Eade, who is a investor and also the author of Chess for Dummies, runs the show Chess Without Borders on the IBM TV network. And then we have Sasha Starr, who is also an investor, runs Investing with Sasha on Wednesday out of Toronto, Canada. Jim is in the Silicon Valley area, otherwise known as the socialist state of Silicon Valley, which is true. But anyway, that's another story. We have John Power, our CPA special guest from Bismarck, North Dakota, who works with people on tax planning apparently all over the world if you do desk, so for the people in Malaysia and India who are listening to this program, he may be somebody who can help you on your import-export business, because we know there are a lot of people who listen that work between India and the United States. We have John Power, CPA, and we also have Max Culiet, who is a certified financial planner, registered investment advisor, president of National Pension Partners in Salt Lake City area. So John, question for you, the opportunity zones. We've heard a lot about discussions about the wonderful world of Oz. Does Oz ever creep into the great state and city of Bismarck, North Dakota?
It's surprising the areas that are opportunity zones. Downtown Bismarck is an opportunity zone area. It's been interesting. I have not really had much client interest in it or questions about it. It seems to be when they first came out, there was a lot of, people were kind of saying this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Other people said it's much ado about nothing. I think the biggest potential for them is certainly not just in the deferral. I mean, that's a nice thing, but it's relatively short. But if you can do it the right investment and they have the potential to eliminate future gains, that can be a pretty powerful thing. It seems to be, from what I'm hearing in projects that I see, it seems to work the best where you're really starting from scratch, because there is a requirement you have to put in, at least as much new money, new construction as the original cost. So where they're starting from, bare land and then going from there, that seems to be the more common projects that are working. But I think it's certainly a viable option to alternative to things like a 1031 exchange or something like that. But just not. I haven't seen a lot of interest in them.
Yeah, but don't you see that Congress comes out with a lot of these tools and techniques they give and then they take away, like captive insurance companies were hot for a long time. Then all of a sudden they did a cutback. Then they made it a listed transaction. In other words, greatest thing since sliced bread. Then it's greatest thing, but they slice the bread. Then all of a sudden it's basically illegal if you do it this way. I mean, don't we see a lot of this coming out of Congress and the IRS? Great, not so great, horrible. That they do that on a lot of these tools and techniques, and you kind of have to keep up with it. Do you see that in your practice?
Absolutely, and and some of that is because when Congress puts these things in place, certainly they can't anticipate how they will be implemented, and there's always a lot of people out who are willing to take something that's a good idea and then try to push it, as far as possible. The captive insurance companies, is a good example. Very, very valid idea and still used by a lot of companies.
Sure.
But then it became a way to get tax deductible life insurance, and so they become misused and insuring for events that there's just really no real risk.
Like hurricanes in Kansas, just in case.
Yeah, you know,
There's a hurricane
being
in
hit by an
Kansas,
asteroid,
or
you know,
there's
something
a
like that,
major
yeah.
volcano in Florida, and we
Yeah.
need to insure that potential risk and spend premium dollars for it, so you get a tax deduction. And so what happens, all of a sudden you see these tools and techniques. Now the disc, when you were saying that, I thought it was dead. Now you're telling me apparently it isn't. And net operating loss, I believe they brought that back after they killed it. It was good, great, bad, killed, brought back.
Can we talk about that, because that is something that I'm having to deal with right now.
Net operating
And,
losses.
well,
Yeah.
here's what happened. For some stupid reason in 2018, they banned it from being able to be carried back anymore. Just out of the blue, boom, 2018, you can no longer carry it back. Okay, so you carry it forward forever too. It's not a 20-year limit anymore. Then CARES Act just came out a few weeks ago, and it stated that they're going to allow you to take whatever was done in 2018 and carry it back. Now, what I found odd is in 2017, there was some kind of oddness in the law for that. And then in 2019 or 20, the law was changing again. So you had this one window of time that you could not carry back. So what's going on? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, there was a couple issues there. There was one, I think unintended by Congress, where if you were because what the rules said was I'm going to paraphrase, but any NOL ending in 2018 could not be carried back anymore. So you had 2017 fiscal years that were in place. You know, we're still going, and when the law when the TCJA was passed, that lost the ability to carry that back kind of unexpectedly. That was corrected, and so that if you were a 2017 fiscal year, you went back to the old rules for that loss. And then there was even a bigger change, as you were just referring to, where they changed the rules so that you could carry back those 2018, 2019 losses to prior years. And that can be a really big deal. I have a client that a couple of clients where we did very large cost segregation studies in 2018. And they ended up with very large NOLs that, okay, we're going to carry some of those forward. Well, the law changed. We could now carry that back and carry it back against much higher tax brackets. You know, right. One of them was a C corporation. You know, C corporation rate's now 21%. In prior years, they were paying, 7% tax rates. So it was a big change.
Yeah. So it is allowable now.
Yes.
Am I correct? So if I had something in 2018 that could offset something in 2017 and 16, I can now do. How far back are they allowing you to carry that back? Are you aware of?
Go back 5 years, which was
5 years.
Used to be 2.
Used to be 2
years ago. It was 3.
Right.
But, yeah. Part of the change was you go back 5.
Well, that's what I think fascinating of tax law. It's like we have a game, and I know Jim and Sasha are both chess players. We have a game, and the rules haven't changed for 500 years. In tax law, we have a game, and the rules are going to change next year, last week, like all over the place. Yeah. In other words, the rules keep changing. So all of a sudden you're going, I'm going this direction, but then the rules change. So I got to go that direction. And then they change the rules again. I got to go this direction. And you can imagine, Max, if they had that in football, that every time, okay, the rules just changed. What? I just played the game last week. And they changed the rules again.
I was under audit 20 years ago. I'm under audit again now, but 20 years ago, I was under an extensive audit, very, very extensive. And the guy came in and he goes, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you can't do this. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. I go, I know when we file these, we follow the laws that exist the year they exist. Because a lot of times when you're being audited, it's for past years. Right. And so I said, would you do me a favor before you say I can't? Would you go pull the laws for each of these line items and see if they were allowed that year? Because maybe it doesn't allow this year, but maybe it was. And kid you not, he was gone an hour. He left me in the room an hour. And when he came back, he goes, oh my God, you were right. But a lot of people would not have done that. A lot of people go, okay, you're the tax man, do whatever you want. And I didn't, because I knew in my heart that when we file our taxes and do our planning and everything, we read the book and we follow the rules for that year. And that was a big, wide opening experience, even for my husband, who was sitting in the room, kicking me under the table. Don't piss him off. Don't piss him off. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you just bruised the mess out of my leg. And I'm asking a legitimate question. And even the guy was like, I would have never thought of that. She's absolutely right. So, they get away being bullies most of the time, doing these things. And a lot of people, they take advantage of you because you don't think to say, could the law have changed? And yeah, it could have. So, and Max, you've been through similar, so you know what I'm talking about. But
oh yeah, well, I like the one I had where I had 2 years being audited by one auditor and 2 years being audited by the other auditor, and they both wanted us to do things totally different.
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the exact same boat.
The arbitrator involved who said after we went through it, and I had to hire an attorney. I had my CPA sitting there, and they say I'm challenging because I know too much. And I said, wait a minute, you guys aren't doing a good enough job. This is what's going on. And the arbitrator goes, oh, now I get it. I see what you're saying. And then he says, let me check. And he looked at some stuff. And he has, these files that are that big.
Yeah.
And he goes through it and he says, yeah, I can see where they said, this one says to do it this way. This one says you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the same thing. I have 2 sets of auditors, and they threw me in half an appeal, and the other half is not an appeal. So I'm dealing with 2 different agencies, and my attorneys have no idea what to do. They've said they've never, in all of their career, and they've been doing this for 40 years, have seen this happen, and they have literally, kind of like you, beaten you down on both sides. And my last other audits were so breezy. I asked them, "Are you sure?" Like you said, you kind of challenge them a little bit, but they came out fine.
Maybe we should do a television show called Audit Drama, like how things, real reality TV show audits from the Internal Revenue Service.
Well, I'm going to bring I've been filming my audits. I asked for permission to.
Oh. Well, it's like Judge Judy, except it would be on the audit. Now, John, I'm sure you've had some experiences in the audit world. How do you handle audits with our I call them our friends at the Internal Revenue Service?
Yeah, I would say that the vast majority of auditors that I've dealt with over the last 40 years are just trying to do their job. But as you guys are relating from your experience. Just like there's vast differences in experience and knowledge in CPAs or attorneys or pension consultants, the same thing applies in the IRS. So you can have some auditors who are very knowledgeable. Many aren't, and that's where you run into those kind of issues, because they many times they'll tend to focus on one issue sometimes. And when they see that, they kind of lose sight of the bigger picture. Sometimes they just make things up. This is what I think it is, and that's what it is. And that's your job to challenge them on that. So
yeah.
I got that right now. They just made up an income for me.
Well, the thing is, I tell people, I said the first thing you want to do is check when they always say facts law. You got to read that law, because on all the audits I've done, when I go read the law, it isn't what they stated. 100%. And I don't know how they do that, because John, all you have to do is copy it. Listen, all you have to do is copy and paste. It's not rocket science.
I think it's from England. They have full immunity for the.
I think it's funny.
But let me explain to you something that I find odd, is that 20 years ago, I didn't have this problem. They audited me. We went through the process. It was very deep, days, weeks of bringing in boxes of papers and reviewing every line item. And they went back 7 years, and it came out clean. No change, as they would say, no change. Great, wonderful experience. And then I went through it a second time. They wanted to check some other things, and everything was good and clean. And then 20 years later, I'm going through this again, and it's all over stupid NOL. But
Yep.
that did exist that they found, but they're making up stories this time. They're lying about everything. They lied about having my records. When I asked them for copies of my old records, they said, "Oh, we destroyed them." I found out they had them 2 years later. So they lied about everything. I've got them on recording. I've recorded everything, and but why are they lying? All of these, some of them are the same people I dealt with years ago. Why are they lying now? And then I find out, well, they got this new commissioner, and their whole goal is how much money are they making off the taxpayers.
I understand that's a state level audit, which is totally different.
I'm doing a state level, but it becomes
Okay.
but they even told me that
Yeah.
they've never seen a state level treated this way, but it does become an IRS issue.
Oh yeah, right. Because it bounces. Your state bounces into your federal. They have this little connection.
But I found out that I think that the agents now get bonus checks if they find out you owe money. So now they're doing everything that they do, but they intentionally delayed my audit. So that intentionally accrued the interest rates. But yeah, I agree with you. We need to do a show just on that. I think.
Well, I don't think there's any show. I don't think there's any show on television that focuses on audits. I mean, because first of all, it's like
the worst crime in the world.
COVID-19. Do you really want to listen to an audit program? Well, problem, and the answer is, or it's like COVID-19 or Judge Judy. Do people really want to listen to small claims court?
CSI's kind of lost its touch.
So yeah, but it can be pretty dramatic. I mean, it can be pretty dramatic. John, have you run into any tax issues that are pretty dramatic? You've been doing CPA work for 40 years. So obviously you've suffered through a lot. I mean, you've done a lot of stuff over 40 years. Have you run into any specific cases, not names or anything, that was fairly dramatic after 40 years?
It's been interesting in many cases where you have some scenarios like what was being discussed, where the agent just won't look at the facts. I had an audit several years ago involved a corporate redemption, and the agent looked at some documentation. And one of the things that we do, and I think most tax professionals will do, is if a client's selected for audit, you get a power of attorney, and you make it clear from that point on that the agent talks to you, not to the taxpayer.
Yeah, 28.
That's one of the taxpayer's rights. And she went, this particular agent, even though we'd already, we'd done all that and made that clear, she went and talked to the taxpayer, asked him some questions, probably kind of in a little bit of a leading manner that supported the position that she was trying to take, that basically instead of a court redemption, that it was dividends to him and he was buying the stock. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so we said, no, this is just dumb. We brought in our manager, which is, one of the things that you can certainly do. If you think the agent is being completely off base, I would ask to speak to his manager and address the issues there. But the manager said, well, yeah, I agree with you, but there's enough of a question that I'm not going to overrule her. So we said, fine, finish the audit, write it up, we'll appeal. I appealed it. Fortunately, she'd made some other mistakes in the exam. Filed my appeal. We met with the appeals officer, and it was actually the very first appeals conference I'd ever had. And I sat down with him, and he walks into the room, and he said, looks at the file, and he says, "What the hell am I doing here?" And I said, "I think that's good, isn't it?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You're right. This never should have come to me." So that was unusual. Back in the 412I pension days, I had a couple clients that we'd set those up, and those got audited. Some went very well. I guess I'd say in general they all went well. One client got dinged a little bit on some very, very technical issue that we probably shouldn't have conceded, but at some point it's not worth fighting anymore. So you get into some of those really unusual areas. today it's going to be things like you mentioned, the captive insurance, conservation easements, things like that are the ones that are coming down the road.
Yeah, and it's hard to distinguish between what is legitimate and what's an abusive tax avoidance transaction. And for those who join us late, this is IBM TV's Financial Friday. We have Kim Calhoun, who sits on the board of computer science at North Carolina State University. John Power, CPA from Bismarck, North Dakota. Jim Eade, who is the author for Chess for Dummies. So he sits on his royalties for Chess for Dummies in the Socialist Republic of San Francisco. So all the money goes in to him, and then he turns around and gives it to the great state of California. Alexander Starr, who has fled Moscow, he left Moscow or Russia, and now lives in Toronto, Canada, who runs Chess Stars and also the investment show on Wednesday. And Max Culett, the president of National Pension Partners in Salt Lake, also a registered investment advisor and certified financial planner. So, Max, tell us a little about the world that you live in. Has it changed upside down because of COVID-19 in terms of the pensions and the investment business that you're in South Dakota?
Well, it's changed quite a bit. I have 28 advisors that work with me, and I don't see them as often. So in a way that helps me because it frees up time from these little got a quick question, time, burners. But what it's also changed is, I have a staff person who goes around and wipes off, with disinfectant solution and so forth, all the conference tables and all the door handles every time, someone comes in or out of conference rooms and, trying to maintain everything. But it's also changed it in the sense that, we already did with National Pension Partners most of our business via GoToMeeting. Now I'm trying to get others to do it and educating people on how to use, those types of programs. Zoom has become extremely popular, I guess, and, some of those things. And I've got to learn how to use those because they'll want me to do a Zoom meeting because they know how to do a Zoom and don't know how to do GoToMeeting, though they're very similar. So some of those things have changed. I think it's the biggest frustration I have as a financial advisor to do it all in all fronts, whether it be a pension plan, dealing with an individual client or business owner, is they ask me a simple question and I have to get information from a company. And what used to take me 15 or 20 minutes sometimes may take 2 or 3 days to get the answer because the people are working from home. And when you finally get to talk to them, the dog is barking in the background. You can hear kids screaming at mom. One gentleman I did a meeting with, he actually was in Nebraska. And I said, I'm curious about your office environment. This is at the end of our meeting. It looks a little different, like something I have in my driveway. And he says, yeah, I'm in my motorhome. It's the one place I have silence and can work.
John, how has
I have 5 kids at home and a wife.
John, how has COVID-19 affected your practice in Bismarck, North Dakota?
I would have to honestly say, relatively little. Again, most of my clients are not in Bismarck, so I'm used to getting information, via email or snail mail or wherever. Again, we weren't hit terribly hard with it, so people were pretty comfortable as far as bringing things to me. We certainly didn't have the same sit down and have the same interactions as we would normally have. It's more drop off and leave. Again, certain kinds of clients were devastated by it. I have some restaurant clients that were shut down for months. Those kind of things. There's, I think we're going to see down the road a little bit of a ripple effect where some of those businesses just can't come back.
Right. Sharif has just joined us from Kuala Lumpur, or there in Malaysia, I guess. Sharif, welcome to the show. You're a PhD scholar. Are you familiar with the domestic international sales corporations? Have you done any of that type of stuff?
Okay. Domestic and international sales related activity discussion
Yes.
you are
Right.
doing right now, right?
Right.
Okay. You the Asia Pacific market, or what's your question actually?
Well,
I
the thing
just
is,
joined.
John does a lot of disc, and I'm not sure if in Malaysia, where you're from, disc actually work or they don't work. Not really sure about. John, when you do the disc, are they really for inbound or outbound transactions? How do they actually work?
Outbound. It's for foreign export sales from the United States.
Oh, from export sales from the United States. Okay, all right. So it's a little bit of a whole different cat. It's exporting from the United States overseas. Now, John, since you've done quite a bit of disc and you work all over the country, how did you happen to acquire your clients from all over the country rather than Bismarck, North Dakota?
Some are referrals. I'm active in certain tax planning organizations, and I have, for example, I get a lot of retirement plan referrals. People asking me to work with that because it's an area I've worked in basically my whole career. Some of it is LinkedIn. I do some LinkedIn marketing. That was where I got we had a client last summer that actually had an IC disc, but their existing firm, it was a very large local firm in the Twin Cities, had just grossly understated the amount of commissions that were allowable. So I went back, amended, open years, and they got about $900,000 of refund. So it can be very significant. And that was a business where basically 100% of their sales were export. So, it's not typical, perhaps, but so LinkedIn and referrals from other professionals.
Yeah, and do you have a staff that you work with, or do you have a team that you work with over in Bismarck?
It's my wife is my office manager. We've intentionally created very much kind of a boutique practice. I don't want to do 1,000 tax returns. I keep my number of clients relatively small, so that I can focus on more tax planning kind of engagement.
Right, and
I work with specialists all over.
Right. Okay, Jim.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for John. These are softball questions, but I pronounce the name of my state is California. How do you pronounce the name of your state?
North Dakota.
North Dakota. Okay, because I've heard it pronounced different ways, and I just wanted to get that for my satisfaction. And my second one is, say I'm a small business and I want to get my name more broadly known, and I sponsor, a chess tournament, say. How do I get a tax break for doing that? Do I offset revenues, or how does it work that I can sponsor something and get it written off my taxes?
Something like that. It would seem to fall pretty clearly under advertising and promotion, and would be deductible. Where the any kind of legitimate business expense is typically deductible. The things that have changed over the years are things like meals and entertainment. Entertainment are not deductible at all anymore. Meals, if they qualify, are 50%. But certainly something that is truly advertising, like sponsoring something like that, I would say would fall into deduction. One of the things I often see with clients is they misunderstand differences between charitable contributions and advertising. For most businesses, businesses get a head up for all kinds of things. I always take the position that unless a contribution, a donation, there's really some donative intent. If you write a check from your business to your church, okay, obviously there's donative intent there. That's a charitable contribution. But many things that you do, that a business does, are really done just because it's kind of expected because you're in business. And I really think those qualify as advertising and promotion more than charitable contribution. Sometimes that makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't. But it's something I see that clients often miscategorize.
So Jim, you can sponsor your chess tournament and write it off as an advertising expense.
Yeah.
You know, so this way you can go. Then you can advertise your book, Chess for Dummies. So you know, all over the country or all over the world. So so John, where do you see the next year or so going? When you said meals 50% deductible, I was going, isn't the restaurant industry hurting? Shouldn't they make those meals back to 100% deductible so they can stimulate the restaurant industry?
You know, I have heard that, some talk about that. That's certainly one of the industries that is just annihilated by the COVID virus, and along with other things such as unemployment benefits that employees make more money not working than they do working. And without getting all political, but I mean that's just the fact situation that industry is dealing with. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some move. Of course, the problem is getting Congress to pass anything.
Right.
I don't think most days you couldn't get the Senate to get 60 votes. Today is Friday.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and so where do you see the next couple months going? Is our economy going to come back? Are we heading for another recession? Or predicting between now and the end of the year, because we have a lot of pension clients that are holding off doing anything. I don't know if you see that. It's like a big freeze out there. What do you see or our economy going between now and the end of the year?
I think it all depends on what happens with this second surge. I think we were seeing a rebounding perhaps faster than what many people expected, which was encouraging. But now, of course, especially in the South and the West, we're seeing a significant surge of new cases. I think it really all depends on how that's handled. And of course, the tension between wanting to make sure everybody's safe and making sure that there's economy that's still there when everybody is safe. So I think it really depends on what or when or if or how much that second surge is. Mm-hmm. And of course, obviously, if we can develop vaccines or something like that, but it sounds like that's at best months away.
Yeah. Now in Malaysia, where you're from, Sharif, you have 30 million people. How many people died of coronavirus in Malaysia right now?
Yes. You know that 118 people died in coronavirus, and there is more than 8,500 plus minus people actually affected by the COVID-19. And I told you that here actually step by step economy moving, like they are opening up the economy and everything. And you also previously asked me about their local business situation and other things. I just want to give you a specific information. Let's say Air Asia. Air Asia is one of the largest aviation company in Malaysia, Air Asia. So last Tuesday, just one day, they sell 41,000 air tickets. So that is the good things of the economy in Malaysia. Like they control this COVID-19 situation very well, as well as now aviation industry not doing very good. But as Malaysia playing a very good role, this is the impact that Air Asia playing getting a very good business. So local, I do discuss with the local aviation industry about this thing. What will happen? Because world media, they are saying that in between it takes 2 years to overcome from this situation. But the local experts say to me, especially his name is Captain Abdul Mannan Mansoor. He is from aviation industry. I can mention his name, and he said in between 6 months, let's say aviation industry, Malaysian aviation industry will overcome from these situations. So this is actually important strategy. Every country, those who playing a very good role in COVID-19 situation, even though it's a Vietnam, even though it's a Malaysia or Singapore or Hong Kong, whatever it is, our deep understanding is that they will overcome soon from these things. So economical recessions and other things, it's our observation it will not playing a very good roles. And on the other hand, like in Malaysia, it's actually very good app for multinational company. Let's say Microsoft, IBM's, Google's, and whatever the big companies, they are actually doing their business in Asia Pacific market from Singapore and Malaysia. So they are also taking different kind of strategy. So as they are taking strategy, I think they will overcome soon. I can just give you an example. So every sector like Islamic finance, local oil industry, real estate, educations, healthcare, especially Malaysia. So they're like you can observe that Malaysian prove that they have a very good healthcare system. So now everything is moving very fast. And we believe that in between six months, what the economical problem and other issues we have, we can overcome from this situation soon. Every sector they're moving forward.
Yeah, and this always bothers me, John, because when I'm talking to Dr. Sharif in Malaysia, they have a population of 30 million, a little bit about the size of the state of California, and they have like 118 deaths and 8,000 infected people. We have 120,000 more deaths and millions of people that are infected. But we're supposed to have the best and the brightest people in the world. John, do you know what happened? How come Malaysia, very little of coronavirus, and the United States is a plague?
In Malaysia, yeah, great question. I don't know. I mean, Sharif, would they go after it very proactively, like much like South Korea did? They certainly didn't have the number of cases, at least initially. I think that's changed a little bit in the last month or so. I think there was just a great deal of misinformation and misunderstanding, and conflicting guidance. We've just got so much conflicting guidance from people. Do you mask? Do you quarantine? Do you stay home? And so people, I think, understandably just didn't know what to do. You see it here. It's probably in general very poor. I think social distancing we did a reasonable job of that, but masks are still the minority, and I think that's going to change now. Going back to your prior question, I think if we see that second surge, it's going to be much more say, hey, we have to do these things, or it's going to be more devastating than the first time.
Right. Sharif, do you see a lot of people wearing masks in Malaysia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, everybody, those who go outside. Actually, from the beginning, government was taking very strong initiative. From the beginning, from first day of this pandemic and everything, they said that if you go outside, either you have to go for 6 months of jail, or you have to pay a financial penalty. So even actually local people, I always said that Malaysian local people is very peaceful, and they follow government rules and everything very strictly. Even you can check that Malaysia, you do not find any people, they say that we do not want wearing mask. Maximum people actually here very disciplined, and they are obedient about the government policy and activities. And yes, government actually take very good initiative, especially for food, for healthcare. Every sector government take good initiative, and local people also support them. That is the one and only solution. We do not know actually government, who is government. Government actually people like you and me, and they also have issues. Much people also have issues. So it's a combined strategy. Mm-hmm. Governments and the much people, when they take the combined strategy, I think this is the way of solutions.
Right. Yeah.
Of course, in the United States, it's my constitutional right to act like an idiot.
Thank you, John. Oh my God.
And apparently in Malaysia, that is absolutely not the case. It's a whole different. For those who are joining us at the hour, this is the IBM TV network. We have Kim Calhoun, who sits on the board of advisors at North Carolina State Computer Science Department, John Power, CPA in Bismarck, North Dakota, and Dr. Sharif, who is a PhD scholar in Malaysia. And of course, we've been talking about the impact of the coronavirus and our rights. Do you see in North Dakota, because I know in North Carolina, they're passing a law now, finally, or at least an executive order, that we all have to wear masks. John, do you see that also in the Bismarck, North Dakota area?
No, I think our state and our governor actually did a very good job. Again, we had relatively minor impacts from it. They really made the case about being, North Dakota smart. And, we kind of joke that social distancing comes natural in the places like North and South Dakota.
Right. You have a lot of land and not that much.
Right.
People,
I read an article in the Wall Street Journal that
right.
in South Dakota, there was 11 people per square mile, and in New York City, there's 26,000. Okay.
Right.
So,
wow.
Right.
So obviously we're not as close. And I think they did a really good job of balancing the two, encouraging people to be safe. And I think by and large, that was the case. In our own group of friends, we didn't get together with friends for a couple months. And then when we did, we only did it, for example, where we could sit outside and social distance. I think generally, businesses, churches, and things cooperated very, very well, and that helped here. So we had a couple hot spots where particular businesses got infections, and then it spread within there. But I think we generally handled it in a pretty balanced way.
A natural social distancing environment helps a lot. It's like we live in a country, so it wasn't very difficult for us to say, okay, we're just not going to see our neighbors and friends for another month or two. It's kind of like the farming season out here. But in areas where they're not accustomed to that, this has been a very, very difficult situation. But I tell people, if we go back to history and are smart, and go through our history and look at the Spanish flu, when they discovered that the mask helped prevent it, that's what wearing the mask was controlling the situation, about not spreading it. It wasn't so much about protecting you, it was about not spreading it to anyone else if you happen to be contagious. Over 50 million people died they estimate over 50 million people died during the Spanish flu. And we can learn from situations like this. But this is not something that's going to go away. Just like all the other viruses, we've just had to learn how to live with them. But people want a pill today that fix everything tomorrow. They want that instant gratification. And what we need to do is just take our time. And I don't think we needed to shut down everything. What I think we needed was pandemic policies. I think we needed pandemic centers, like in the movie 93 Days, which is a true story about how they contained and controlled Ebola in Nigeria. It could have gone like wildfire, especially with political situations at hand. And instead of letting the politicians get involved and the politics get involved, they said, no, we're going to take care of it as doctors. They brought in a doctor from Virginia who was a pandemic infectious disease expert. And he controlled and contained a deadly situation where 98% of the time the people die. They reversed those odds. So I think that we should have taken and rehired our pandemic team. Why? I mean, if they existed, right? But I think we could have set up pandemic centers, and instead of having people who are infected go to the hospital and doctor facilities spreading it even more, we have centers. Like if we were going to shut down hotels anyway, or turn one of the hotels in every city into a pandemic center, and then let people get well, you create a means to not spread anymore. But we didn't do that, and it's caused a worse problem because now people are tired of it. Like you said, it's violating my civil rights, and it doesn't have to. I look at other countries that have survived it very well, and it's because they took that precaution of wearing a mask, like we did in 1918 here. I love these pictures because it shows so much respect for society back in the day, right? They weren't very smart. I love this coloration, right? But even the barbers, right? Everybody. But this is what I tell people. If you don't believe a mask is there to protect others from getting something from the person, then next time you go to have a surgery, waive your right for the doctor to not wear a mask. Because he's truly wearing a mask to protect you from any contaminated information that he has. But why force anyone to wear a mask? But look, in 1918, these people, you know, took charge and were respectful and said, okay, let's do it. Let's get this under control. And this would, had to happen all over the world, right? It wasn't just in the United States. But look, I mean, we just did what had to be done. It wasn't about civil rights. It was about protecting each other. And I agree. Thank you, John, for making that statement because until people get over this civil rights thing, we're not going to survive. We'll be the one country that goes under because of COVID. It's going to happen.
And hopefully we've learned a few things. That this shouldn't have been as big as a surprise as what it was, because certainly similar things, SARS and whatever, have popped up from time to time, and with the global, economy and the global world that we have, and travel and everything, it's something develops in one country is going to spread, and hopefully we've learned and we'll prepare a little bit better for it, because these things are going to happen.
Well, and that's just it. Is the thing to do is be prepared, and I think a pandemic team is very important. A lot of people don't know this, but last year, I think it was Microsoft came out with a game called Pandemic. It's been around for a while, but they actually improved it and made it a big game. And it's called Pandemic, and it's all about what would you do to prepare for a pandemic. And it's an interesting board game. You can go out and Google it. It's sold on Amazon. I keep saying I'm going to buy it, and I forget. But I think that it's like you said. I think we were aware of it early on, that we didn't react on it like we should have. And I just think that even though it's kind of late, there are things we can do to allow us to reopen and control the spread, and we're just not doing it. And I wish more people, including our administrators, would go watch the movie 93 Days. And maybe your people did. Maybe your people, that's why Dakotas are doing so well, not just because they're naturally socially distant, but maybe they actually read the story of Ebola and how they controlled and contained it. But in my mind, I don't see anything wrong with wearing a mask. I don't, I hate this thing where people are going, why are you shaming me into wearing a mask? I mean, we shouldn't have to shame anyone into wearing a mask. It just should be natural. Okay, this is what we have to do to win this war. This is war, and this is what we have to do. And, we did this with HIV. We figured out how to live with HIV in our society. We never found a cure. We never found a cure for Ebola, malaria, any of those viruses, SARS, MARS, none of them have found a cure. Flu doesn't have a cure. We claim we have a vaccine, but I even doubt that. I often wonder, how do you have a vaccine before the flu hits?
Yes.
To me, that's big pharma manipulating things. So I think we need to, like you said, I think we just need to work together again. And we need to treat this as war. And this is war against humanity. This isn't war against any country. We need to unite as humans, resilient. Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't claim that I'm always very consistent about behaving the way I should. But, when it comes down to why do you wear masks, really the answer is because I care about you.
I'm getting I'm having them printed, respect or I love you on my mask. I'm going to have all of those little remarks stamped on there so people know that I'm not doing it because I'm scared for me.
Right.
because that's not, and then that's why doctors wear masks. And I had this one woman, or heard her, she kept complaining, well, I can't breathe. And I go, that's baloney. Doctors wear them for 8 hours at one time in surgery. I know, because they operated on me for 8 hours. So don't say you can't breathe. You know, they're uncomfortable. I get it. I have claustrophobia for things like that. But every day I put it on and I wear it for just a few minutes to build up my claustrophobia. And so I can wear it out. But, you know, people are not taking this right. And I feel, and the other thing we have to look at is what kind of tax implications are we putting ourselves into with all the stimulus checks that are going out there, all the situations with companies that had to stop working. I mean, these are big questions of how do we get back on track and rebuild ourselves, because quite honestly, I have no idea. I haven't even filed my taxes this year. And that's another question. What about that? You know, we were told we can wait until July 15th, which this is the first time in a very, very long time that I waited this long. But it has to do because I'm under audit and I want to wait till that's finished. But if we get to July 15th and we're not ready, can we extend it like we've always done? Or was that a natural there's a lot of things we don't know.
There was a lot of conjecture that the IRS and the Treasury would extend the extended period, but they announced this week, the IRS announced this week that they weren't going to do that. But you can still, file what will now be, used to be a 6 months extension, but now it'll be a 3 month extension for individual tax returns to the normal October 15th extended.
Okay. All right. Yeah, but these are talks that I think a lot of people don't know because we've been so preoccupied with just trying to survive, trying to figure out what to do. If by taking the stimulus check, did some people increase their income to the point that they get taxed for? I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of people don't know. And
isn't the stimulus check going to be ordinary income for everybody? Is that what the plan is?
No. Excuse me. I have the dreaded summer cold, so forgive me. It will impact on it's an advanced tax payment, so no, it's not taxable. It's a credit, and you're just really getting an advance on your credit, and it reconciles on your 2020 tax return.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Now, what about the PPP loans that are coming out? People that are receiving those.
That's the interesting one. When Congress made the PPP, forgiveness non-taxable. Generally, cancellation of indebtedness income, of course, is taxable. These specifically are not taxable, but the IRS according to the code, they're absolutely correct. It's taking the position that any expenses paid by proceeds of the forgiven loan are not deductible. So people are going to have to factor that into their tax planning, because basically you can take what you think your net income is or taxable income is and just add back the amount of your PPP loan, and that's going to be your taxable income is going to be that much higher.
Wow.
And what about the national debt? Should we worry about the national debt, or is that something that we just keep kicking down the road every year?
Depends on how old you are, I guess. If I'm 90, I don't worry about it. No, it's going to start impacting a lot of fiscal policy. It's going to impact tax policy. You already see when you're talking about additional stimulus options. Right now, where especially the Republicans in the Senate are saying, well, we just spent, I don't know what it was, $4.5 trillion. At some point, this has to be paid back. And so I think there's going to be tremendous pressure on tax policy as we go forward. Certainly, depending on what happens in November, things could change significantly.
I have a question about that. I mean, we got all of this billions of dollars that were written out to stimulus checks, and in my mind, stimulus checks was to stimulate the revenue stream and circulation in our economy. Where did that money go? It stopped somewhere because it never circulated. I mean, that's what stimulus is for, is circulating that revenue. And everybody got a check. I think it went the wrong direction. I think everyone at the bottom of the food chain should have gotten the check, and it should have circulated up somehow and then come back down. But it didn't. It stopped. Where's the $4 trillion? Where's it sitting?
I think if they had the opportunity, I would hope Congress would say, yeah, we would love to go back and do a whole lot of things differently. The PPP loans, are a good example where, I mean, everybody and their dog applied for a PPP loan. If you had a business, there should have been some sort of economic injury or reasonable expectation of economic injury from the coronavirus. The economic injury loans had that requirement. The PPP loans were, really just, I mean, they were looked at as free money, and I'm going to line up at the trough like everybody else to get it because it's foolish if I don't. Now, interestingly enough, they didn't pay them all out. It was supposed to end on June 30th. They have extended it, and there was still $130 billion available. So something happened where either everybody who thought they could apply has already gotten it, but it was, there was a lot of, I don't need it, and there is a question there because one of the requirements even in the PPP loan is you're making a statement that my business has been impacted by the COVID virus, but it was like everybody else is getting it, so like I said, I'm gonna take my spot at the trough like everybody else.
No, I mean, we applied for it as well. I actually got the confirmation number. We did it on time. We never received it. Finally, I asked about it. I sent them my confirmation number, said, hey, where's our money? And they came back and said, let's requalify you. Okay. And so I sent in the application a second time. And then they came back and said, no, we have to cancel you because you applied twice now. And what?
It was a. I won't use the word I usually describe it, but it was a mess.
Yeah.
One thing I
saw the thing where it said fill this out to requalify, and so I did, and it wasn't even a full application. I just had to do like a few little things, but I did it the first time, but they just wanted me to do it again. So it was just a few of the items, not even all of them. And then they came back and said, well, we're going to have to delete you.
Yeah. And a lot of businesses, I think it depended somewhat on what lender you used, but they would get letters back saying you weren't a qualifying business, and they clearly were. It was just too much for the system to handle in too short a period of time.
Well, and I was told that minority owned businesses did not qualify at all. So, and that's why people like Magic Johnson stepped up to the plate and put $300 million into a pot for minority business owners. But that went really fast too. So, but yeah.
Yeah, one thing I just want to know in terms of USA cultures and other thing, we observing few of the political opinion on universal basic income. So what do you think? Like as you are working inside USA and the business and the economical condition, what your observation about universal basic income? Like from Malaysian part, like say Asia Pacific, we want to know that how it works. Is it work for US economy, or is this strategy actually only like political commitment?
My opinion?
With you.
We laugh in North Dakota that we are kind of a schizophrenic state because we tend to be very conservative, very much a red state. But in our history, we're also the only state that has a state-owned bank and a state-owned mill. So we have a socialist, a little bit of a socialist history in this conservative state. But my personal opinion is I would be very opposed to it. I think it's the wrong approach. I think there's a variety of things the government can do to encourage productivity. That certainly isn't one of them.
Yeah, they've actually beta tested this out in Finland, Sharif, and then they had to pull it back because, frankly, it wasn't working. And then in Alaska, and there's one other state, it may be Vermont and New Hampshire, they actually do have it, but it's not a big income. I mean, I think Alaska has I'd have to go research it, but they had like a dividend from their oil. Believe it or not, this is a place where Alexander Starr may move to because he'll be receiving. He loves dividends. We've already had that discussion, and what happens because they had so much oil up in Alaska, they gave all the citizens of Alaska, people live there, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500 a year. It wasn't very much as a dividend for the Alaska oil, and then they did the same thing either in Vermont, New Hampshire. Again, not very much, 1,000 or 1,500. But then, see, the real problem, and this is what John is describing, and they've done studies. As you keep increasing it, then it gives a disincentive. In other words, why should I do anything? I'm getting paid anyway to do nothing. And they've had that here in the United States with the unemployment, where they made a mistake and they said everybody gets an extra $600 a week. Well, in Bismarck, $600 a week. See you later, John. I'm not working. In New York or San Francisco, $600 a week. I got to still work because it's very expensive to live there. That just covers the rent. So they kind of made a mistake. It should have been a percentage of the unemployment benefits that you're receiving per that state, but instead they made it a flat 600. And this is the problem with the U.S. is that, like, what works in North Dakota, yeah, they socially distance, what do you say, 11 people per, square mile, but doesn't work in New York where there's 26,000 per square mile. In other words, the population density and the culture of each state are so different. So when I look at UBI, I go, well, it's like depends. At certain level, maybe in Alaska and either New Hampshire or Vermont, the UBI at that level, it's okay. But as you start increasing it, then all of a sudden, hey, John, wait, you need some help in your tax. Let's say you said, John, your UBI now is $400,000 a year. John will go, need some help in your taxes? Good luck in finding another CPA. I'm going out fishing. I mean, that's the problem. It's a real problem.
The other problem with this whole stimulus package was there are a lot of people who are collecting more money being unemployed than they were when they were employed, and they don't want to go back to work now. Why would they even bother going back to work?
The unemployment benefits in the United States and some states actually exceed their salaries. Okay, so it's better off for them not to work economically.
Very common in places like the restaurant industry.
Sure, right. And so the thing is, we've seen that problem over here. So in Malaysia, if you want to try UBI, I would say that you're just going to have to be careful on how you're going to try it. In other words, and look at some of the other countries and study what they've done. And this is the problem we've also had over here, is that we really haven't looked at what's going on over there in Malaysia, with 100 deaths and 30 million population. We don't have that result. But in Malaysia and South Korea, you had the scare of SARS and MERS, so you developed a natural response to a pandemic. Wear the mask, you pushed it out, get in front of it. Here, this is like our first exposure since 1918 of something like this. So frankly, our leaders fuddled around, our doctors are going, we don't know what to do. I mean, it was frankly a very poor, in my opinion, a very poor response, given the fact that we lead in coronavirus deaths worldwide, and we should have been smarter and better. We're purported around the world to being smarter and better, and we certainly did not produce that result. And so where Malaysia, I think you guys did a good job. I mean, we'd love to have that result right now, but different world, different culture. Yes.
One of the interesting. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, yes. One of the interesting strategy I just want to share with you. Let's say Bangladesh, they have microfinance. I think USA also have microfinance with the help of Dr. Mohammad Yunus. He first introduced this microfinance concept, and I think he win Nobel Prize as well. So here, Malaysia, policy-wise, economic policy-wise, they have a bank Amanah. So they first take it from the microfinance institution from Bangladesh, and they even in this pandemic situation they are trying to make it more effective, because micro level industry, they said we can do a lot of macro level activities, lot of macro projects and many big projects. This is another history, but for survival of the local economy we need to promote this microfinance more effectively. But interesting point of view is that policy wise, this Bank Amana microfinance strategy now is much more better than Bangladesh, because they provide less interest rate. I think 5% interest rate, and with this 5% interest rate, actually many women, especially many women, Muslim women, and many they said kampung mean village area people, they integrated with the national economy, and they are producing small things, and step by step they become millionaires. So even in that situation, this Bank Amana, this microfinance, they are also working. And I believe that this micro initiative also important. Let's say we are, I don't know, maybe USA have better strategy, but in that situations, like example, we give them salary or whatever it is, maybe long time it will not work. But if we strategically we can focus on microfinance, give them loan, or state also can provide this kind of money, and they can develop themselves small thing. Because now I cannot, let's say in my community I have 10,000 people, so okay, microfinance initiative, I can think that how I can give services this 10,000 people. Then I think this is very powerful. This micro initiative can help to overcome from these situations. Maybe this is one of the best strategy, but what I see from Malaysia, this Bank Amana strategy, and this is really good strategy, policy wise, and like implementation and everything. And definitely it's working. So I don't know, maybe USA they have better strategy, but microfinance now is most important.
Yeah, but my microfinance is a little different than UBI. So I can see microfinancing actually working, because what you're doing is you're feeding into the small business owners that even the United States have actually carried the day. The large corporations, they're full to the brim, and they don't move the economy. It's really what we've seen is the small businesses have pushed the economy the last 10 years more so than the large corporations. The other thing that's pushed us are the unicorns out of San Francisco and Seattle. In other words, the Amazons, you have the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts of the world, and it all tends to be developed on the West Coast, although I have seen a little bit migration toward the middle of the country due to the high cost of living in those places and the high cost of doing business, and also the high cost of taxes, which I don't know what it is in North Dakota where you've seen a migration. We have experienced that in Salt Lake. It's bothered me because our headquarters are in Salt Lake, and it's driven up all the real estate prices, John, as the people from California are leaving and going to Texas and Utah to set up their corporations and to set up their infrastructure rather than staying in California, where real estate prices are high and taxes are high. Have you seen that migration into North Dakota, John?
We've seen it a little bit. Of course, you read it a lot more of like New York to Florida. That's very common. It is interesting. I did a tax plan for someone in California last year. And generally, when I look at doing a tax plan, most of the time you can kind of ignore state taxes. You focus on the federal, whatever the federal tax savings are, because the state taxes are much smaller. They typically go hand in hand, but it's much smaller. Except in this case, it was really the first time I'd looked at a California case, and I went, "Oh my!"
Right, it's 13.
It was a huge factor, and because the California tax rates accelerate so quickly, getting income down not only saved federal taxes, but there was a significant impact due to state taxes. And I'd never seen that before, because again, North Dakota, we're a relatively low tax state.
Right. That's what I would figure. But we've seen California actually eclipse Hawaii and Oregon to be now back again the highest state tax rates in the country at 13.3%. At 13.3%, it all of a sudden becomes a budget item. They have to look at. We have talked to some of the companies in California, people there. Some of them, they go, I'm not going to leave. I don't care what it is. Okay, the rates. Some of them, they can't leave because that's their jobs. I mean, it's impossible. And then there's the group that, hey, I can leave. And they go, what are the other states to go to? And I think Utah, it's about 5%. And in Texas, it's 0. So Texas has been a big beneficiary of the migration out of the state of California into the great state of Texas because there's no tax. And Nevada the same way. There's no tax, and same with the state of Washington. So the state tax game is quite interesting over here to see the corporations move, from place to place, dealing with the area of state tax.
When they put their limitation on SALT deductions, state and local taxes for itemized deductions, the tax code was subsidizing those high taxes to a certain degree, and of course, it tends to be the coastal states with the higher tax rates, and of course they've all been screaming about that. The answer is lower your tax rates, but but that's not certainly the trend that they're going with.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. But have you seen an effect in North Dakota dealing with the oil prices? The Balkan oil fields had for years sprung up and been very prosperous. Then oil went down, and then oil went back up again. I mean, it's almost like a yo-yo. What do these oil companies do? Because when I see that much volatility, I go, how do they manage that volatility in the oil prices?
It's been a challenge. It's been interesting to observe. This was certainly not the first boom that North Dakota had. Oil was discovered in North Dakota back in the 50s. And we've had several booms and busts since then. The thinking was, every time this time is different. And we learned that it's not, and the thinking was that, really this time was different because there's no question about the amount of reserves that are here.
Right, they're large.
Now it's price driven, and
price driven. Right,
prices were high. We saw a huge impact in North Dakota. Mostly, and I would say as a rule, the state handled it and the communities handled it pretty well. There was the relatively small town that's right in the heart of the Bakken. Really did an exceptional job. I mean, they've spent a lot of money on infrastructure and schools and new hospitals, and they've really positioned themselves well for the long term. That's certainly not typical, but they did. But yeah, we've seen for a long time it didn't seem to impact the state. The decline in prices. As much as we maybe would think it would have, because they were still producing. Now with when the oil prices got down below $30 a barrel, and for one day or a few days, whatever it was, when the futures were actually negative, now you're seeing wells just shut down, and so it's more of an impact now. Where I don't remember, they announced the other day. But oil tax revenues were down substantially this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you live in Bismarck, North Dakota. Why North Dakota? What's the big driver to live in Bismarck? Why do you like Bismarck, North Dakota?
I'm a North Dakota native. Bismarck is a nice sized community. We're about 75,000 people. It's the second largest city in Bismarck. It's the capital, so has a strong healthcare community. So we're really of a size. We're very fortunate that we we're kind of a big small town.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And you're also a certified tax specialist. Can you explain to our audience the certified tax specialist?
Yep. That's a designation given by an organization called the American Institute for Certified Tax Coaches. They sponsor some continuing education and academy that you go through and you can become a certified tax coach. Then they have some additional higher levels of designation, depending on experience, number of plans that you've done, a certified tax planner, and then a certified tax strategist, which is what I am.
Okay. Yep. And
been doing it for a long time.
And speaking of taxation, somebody who doesn't really, who's an advisor, Matthew Jennings has joined us. He's a financial advisor out of Atlanta, and where you're at right now, Matthew, what city are you in?
I'm currently in Coconut Creek, Florida.
Oh, Coconut Creek, Florida, right? Because last time I talked to you, we were in Los Angeles or Southern California, right?
Yeah, just got back from Denver, so I'm all over the place.
Yeah, you work all over the place like John. John has a national, he's a CPA with a national practice. I'll just do the introductions for people that are joining us later. IBM TP. We have John Power, a certified tax specialist, certified public account CPA out of Bismarck, North Dakota. Dr. Sharif out of Malaysia, who's a PhD scholar in Malaysia. Alexander Starr from Toronto, who is also runs our program called Just Stars, which will be on tomorrow, Saturday, and runs the Investment with Sasha on Wednesday. Kim Calhoun out of the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. And with us, we have another special guest, Matthew Jennings, who's a financial advisor all over the country. I talked to him in Atlanta and Florida and California, and I guess he's now back in Florida in Coconut Creek. So Matthew, tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, I'll do that. I am an IRS enrolled agent, which is the highest designation that you can get in tax. I have an MBA in finance. I have some doctoral credits in finance. I have a couple years in law school. I'm also board certified in estate planning. I'm a registered financial consultant, and I'm also a certified trust specialist. And what we do at Jennings Global is we look at the world as a whole in estate planning, because estate planning is basically advising a person on what they own, regardless of whether it's located. And so that can be property in various states in the U.S. That can be property or assets in other countries as well.
Yep, and a lot of countries have a federal estate tax, or they have an estate tax. Some states have a state estate tax. John, but they rolled back a lot of the federal estate taxes years ago. I think the exemption now is over 22 million or something like that. John, since you're a CPA, have you recently run into estate tax issues in Bismarck, North Dakota?
No, as you mentioned, the exemption is about 25 million now. So it's, even at a much lower level, it was a very small percentage of the states that paid estate taxes. Certainly 25 million, it's a very, very small percentage, which doesn't really change the need for estate planning. It changes some of the tax perspectives on it, but people still have issues as far as how to pass along wealth, liability planning, asset protection planning, and it's still just amazing. And I'm sure Matthew has the same experience at the number of people that just simply don't even have a will.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and do you see that in Florida, Matt? Because I know that Florida is a very big estate conscious. There's a lot of senior people there. Do you see that mainly in Florida, or is it mainly in Atlanta and California? Where do you see a lot of the estate problems in your practice?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere, unfortunately. And the thing with estate planning is that, as you know, the federal unified credit is always changing, and it's gonna, the sunset comes in 2025 when they're going to reduce it back. And we're thinking even below what it was originally at 5.5 per person, and that's 5.5 million. We're thinking that it might go down to 3.5 million. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to encompass a lot more people. Mm-hmm. And so
Yeah, isn't the federal government going to have to do something because we just acquired about $4 trillion in debt? Isn't the estate tax? Do you see that coming back, John? Because of hey, how are we going to cover the national debt when there's no, our tax revenue is going down and our debt's going up? How are we going to handle this?
Certainly, if we get a Democratic president and Democratic control of the Senate in November or January, I think that's inevitably something that's going to be on the table. I would agree with Matthew. I think that there will be a look at lowering it dramatically. I mean, it's not that many years ago. It was 600,000, but not 11.
I remember
1.5 million.
Right.
I don't think it'll go, something like that, but certainly on a much lower unified credit. I think that's inevitable. I think the only thing that would stop that from happening is just kind of what we have now, where Congress just can't pass anything.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so the things we end up in a stalemate, and there's nothing that's going to happen in the tax area. Now, Matthew, you're in Atlanta and Coconut Creek, Florida, and you're all over the place. How do you happen to work this national practice, especially under COVID-19? You are traveling, I know that, because last time I talked to you, you were in California. But how are you traveling under COVID-19?
Well, I'm a Marine, so I'm gonna answer this like a Marine would answer. My ideas about COVID is that everyone is going to be exposed to it. Obviously, all of the masks and all of the hand sanitizer and all these different things that we're trying to do is not helping it at all. As a matter of fact, the virus is small enough to penetrate the N95 mask and any other mask that you can have unless you go to an actual, military type mask. So everyone will eventually get exposed to it. So in my opinion, I guess it boils down to a matter of just being healthy, because the strong survive. So if you're a healthy person, you're eating right, you're exercising, you're going to get exposed to it, but you're going to be okay. I just see it as overrated. Everybody's scared for no reason. And I continue to travel. As a matter of fact, I think I had it once. I think I had it last December because I was feeling, bad. It was like a cold that I'd never had before. I couldn't get rid of it. And I just thought it was a bad cold or a bad flu.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that I got exposed to it. But like I said, I was, in pretty good shape and everything. So I was able to just, overcome it without any major difficulty.
Well, thank you for your service and time. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that we've, but I think the big thing that the doctors want is for us to control it so they're not overwhelmed right now. And that's what a good pandemic team can do to help us control the situation, the wildfire, so that they're not overwhelmed and they're overextended, because right now some hospitals are and some are not. I think in a good military situation, if we had good military in charge, they would have looked at all of our closets and inventory, because I know you guys, and they would have said, okay, we have all these resources in this closet and in this storeroom at this facility. This one doesn't have enough. We know actively we're using more here. Let's move inventory. But nobody was doing that. Nobody was taking inventory of what we have anywhere, how we can share resources to win. To me, this is war. It's just a different kind of war. But I agree, eventually 70% of us will have it. What we talk about on our health channel is to be healthy. That is the compromised immune systems that will not survive this. And so we are inspiring healthier, better habits, right? Build your immunity, get stronger, healthier mental attitude about it. But, the mask, if you don't wear them properly, they're not going to work. They are not going to work if you don't use them for the right reasons, because mostly, this is what I told people from the beginning, because I've worked clean labs before. The mask isn't about protecting you. The mask is about protecting other people. Why do you think doctors wear a mask in a surgery room, right? They're not wearing the mask to protect themselves from you. Generally, they're protecting spread of anything to you. So I think you're right. I'm glad to see that somebody's still traveling, and I do think that people were infected with it back in December and November, because I saw a lot of people very sick back then, and not just a few either. A lot of people had something that I've never seen before, where it stayed. I don't know. Did it stay with you like a month or so?
I had the same thing. I was sick for 3 weeks. I've never been sick for 3 weeks in my life.
Yeah, my husband was the same way. What about you, Matthew? He froze.
Yeah.
But
One
anyway,
thing.
you know, for people who were sick during that time, I heard that it was unlike anything they've ever had before. Was that for you, John?
Yeah. It was for 2 weeks. I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, they say that some people are asymptomatic and some people just get it less than other people. So you might have actually had it and recovered. He may have had it and recovered and was just asymptomatic. It affects different people different ways. In Malaysia, they just shut everything down, and they
they also
have a
say,
whole different attitude toward that
right,
in Malaysia.
we have 3 strains of C19 anyway.
Yeah,
so you could have a different strain and be effective differently. So they're still researching this. This isn't something that, but I agree. I think we need to quit being afraid of it and just learn what we need to do to live with it. We don't need to be overwhelming our doctors either, because Dr. Arthur is overwhelmed right now, and
he hasn't been on in a while.
That concerns me.
Right.
That concerns me when my local doctors are overwhelmed, not getting the PPE equipment they need. That disturbs me. So,
right. Yes.
One thing I just want to share, like I saw, like even from media, that USA people, some of the people is disagreeing about wearing masks. Many things. This is actually interesting. Like I just want to share about the Malaysia. Strategically, Malaysia, yes, many actually technology, knowledge, and many things they learn from first world. Let's say North America and Europe. But strategically, they follow Japanese culture. Let's say here the previous Prime Minister Mahathir bin Mohamad, he tried to follow Japanese culture. Let's say in this situation, I discussed with my friend in Japan. They live in Japan, so I said, "What's the situation in Japan?" They said, "Yes, from the long time we try to practice this kind of things, wearing mask, then sanitize everything, clean our hands, and they are actually following that way." So Malaysian people, they are culturally, they are very obedient, they are very peaceful. So same thing, like in Malaysia, I find that they are wearing masks and they are very disciplined, even cleaning and maintaining SOP and everything. Actually they maintain very properly, and they're getting the result. Actually they are getting the result. Yes, I can understand. I have one specific understanding, maybe weather playing a very important role as well in this COVID-19 situations. But I don't know, even Singapore highly affected for the COVID-19. Now they are also controlling. But it's a little bit of confusing in terms of my point of view. When wearing mask or sanitize everything and cleaning is a very important part for fighting against COVID. So there is, I think that we should not go argue that I will wear mask or not, and I have to respect other people. There is no choice. Like even example, I have my family. I have to respect my other family members. So I don't know. This is why this is too much of debatable issues. It's very common sense. I think it's very common sense, and everybody should obey these rules. There is no choice.
Obviously, we see we have a different culture, you notice, Sharif. In other words, but see, I look at the results. Okay, the results, Malaysia, you have a little over 100 people that have died out of 30 million, and we've had 120, maybe 130,000 die. But we have a bigger population. We have 300 million. But even if we went down to 10% of that, it'd be 12,000 as opposed to couple hundred. So I just look at the math. The math says where the mass follow Malaysia. But Americans aren't like that, as you notice. They're a little bit more, we're individualistic and we're going to do it our way. And speak about doing things our way. Alexander Starr, how's it in Russia and Canada when it comes to these mask and, how you say, obeying what the leaders say? I guess everybody says, Putin, forget it, we're going to do it our way, right?
Well, first of all, congratulations to all that Putin now can be a president of Russia for the next 75 years, provided that he'll be still alive. Second of all, we discussed a different scenario of living in socialist states such as California and others, and fighting for the government assistance and other things. Let me just tell you how it's all done in Canada. In Canada, we had an option to apply for 2,000 a month of government assistance. Together with my wife, we declined to do that because obviously then we have to deal with taxes, and then our accountants will be loaded with different all kinds of paperwork. Eventually, we will have to pay for it, and I figured out that there's not much benefits in this couple $1,000, but I was surprised. So we didn't apply for anything, but I was surprised last week to find out that all of a sudden we both have extra $1,000 in our accounts. Couldn't figure why. Well, it was actually government assistance to senior citizens, for which you don't apply, you get it anyway. You want it or not, you apply it or not. Actually, you couldn't even apply. There's no such mechanism. You just got it automatically just for being senior citizens. So I thought, well, okay, hell with taxes, but it's a nice present of $500 each. And obviously we accept it. Nobody asked us whether we are willing to accept it or not. It's just on your account. What can you do to send it back? So you have to figure out how to do it and where to send it and so on. And then it's not going to be even credited most likely because of the some clerk's mistakes or so on. So, okay, I decided to keep. I will buy myself an ice cream or something else. Now in Moscow, situation is is going from bad to worse. There is no any government assistance, as we know. People are struggling. Whoever has any means to leave country is doing exactly that. It doesn't matter where they're going to Czech Republic, or they're going to France, or to Canada, or if they will get the visa. Not to states, it's way more complicated, and actually people from states are not being accepted now in Europe and even Canada. So it's kind of a very strange situation. So let's see if I want to travel today. I think I can go from July 15th. I think I can travel to Europe, but do I really want to travel to Europe? Probably not. So what should I do? Okay, so I'm staying here. I'm enjoying your program. The market is closed today for the holiday. However, Canadian market is open. I just discovered that. So
really, Canadian market's open,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I did a little trade. I bought on Toronto Stock Exchange 1,000 shares of Barrick Gold and sold 10 covered calls. So joyous little trade.
Right.
What else to do? Then I will go to have cigar. Then, okay, I'll make another coffee. And we'll figure out what next to do. Probably watch Netflix, something interesting.
Yeah.
Life is going on. What can I say?
Oh, okay. So you could still do your trading, but you did it on the Toronto Exchange, not the New York Stock Exchange.
It's horrible. There is a huge spread.
I was going to say, you're probably going to hit with a spread.
It'll take half an hour to get filled an option.
Right.
I have to do it at the market, which I don't. So there are some peculiarities, but it keeps you busy, though.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you're a believer in gold right now during the panic. When people panic, they go to gold, right?
I don't see really a panic. I think Americans are very heroic people. They're prepared to die for the right, their constitutional rights and their freedoms and so on. So actually, I don't see any panics in the US. What I do see though is that this additional debts of trillions of dollars and there is no end to it.
Hmm.
So eventually, people will have to start to look of other assets outside of US dollars. And unless you want to go into rupees or rubles or some other exotic currencies, number one asset that you are going to look at is gold. It's
Hmm.
absolutely gold. There is nothing else but gold. So if you don't do it today, you will do it tomorrow. If you do it not
Gold or GE stock, right?
no, Facebook is garbage. Actually, I'm trying just to squeeze $5,000 out of my
Yeah,
trade.
but do you want to pay the high premium on Tesla right now? Tesla has a valuation just eclipsed Toyota. Seriously?
How many cars they sold and how many cars Toyota sold? What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah. John, in your CPA practice, do clients ever ask you for investment advice or anything like that? In other words, what to invest in or what to do with their money?
Certainly, and I am a registered investment advisor, so I mean sometimes I have that as a client relationship. But yeah, I think it's pretty common that people will ask their CPA or tax professional for advice on things like that, and the key is to I think to know what you're talking about and know what you're not and know what you don't know. And if you're just giving opinions, certainly general opinions about the economy and things like that, uh, I think that's some validity. I would rarely, say, buy Tesla stock. I mean, I wouldn't
Right.
go to that kind of specifics.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I was just looking at Tesla the other day when my wife said, "Hey, you should have bought it. It was $30 a share." Well, you can always go back
Yeah.
and look at but now it's like when it's riding high. I have a real problem when I see these valuations of certain of these companies it's similar to the dot-com boom. I remember that when who was it? Mark Cuban bailed out of broadcast.com for $4.6 billion. And the company, if you look at the financials, made $30 million in revenue. Now, show me when a company is making $30 million in revenue worth $4.6 billion.
Right.
It's not, but he was smart enough. He sold it. And the first thing he did once he sold the company, he took his cash and put half of it in U.S. Treasuries. He goes, gone, put it in a safe play. But
back in the dot-com days and the net boom, it was interesting. And it was probably should have been one of the biggest warning signs was when I remember reading about analysts saying things like, net income doesn't matter anymore. We need new metrics of valuing companies because net income doesn't matter. Earnings don't matter. I'm thinking that makes absolutely no sense. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is earnings.
Right.
We can project them, and we're doing all things with that. But if a company doesn't make money, it won't be in business.
Yeah, it's not going to be in business. Ultimately, it's going to collapse. But I've seen, yeah, right. Well, and then we see some of the companies that were stars of yesterday, and this always gets me because they have such a big advantage over a new corporation or startup, and they collapse, like Blockbuster Video, gone. J.C. Penney. I mean, they've been around for a long time. Now they're gone. So when you see some of these companies that have what I say a big edge in the market, then they collapse. I'm wondering who's managing these corporations that should have, again, back to the best and the brightest working for them, and then all of a sudden they collapse. Granted, their industries are tough, but at the same time, if you work with a small company or a startup, their situation is 100 times tougher than the big advantage that a company like J.C. Penney has, or the one that recently went under. It didn't surprise me. Is 24-Hour Fitness, closing 130 stores. Now I can see a lot of that has to deal with the coronavirus. issues and impact on that. But we've seen that actually happen, and that has a ripple effect throughout the entire economy when you see the collapse of some of these corporations that are out there.
Places like Penny, of course, that was just a slow, painful death. It's just, it's like watching the train wreck that you can see is going to happen, and you can't stop it, and they've been declining for so many years. They just obviously it was poor man. Some of it was the world has changed, Amazon and everything like that has changed everything, but they were on a path to bankruptcy for many years. Right. Yeah, and the Amazon is everywhere. In other words, got Alexa sitting next to me. They're delivering things. It's almost like any place they can make money, they're going out and or an opportunity. They're taking the opportunity. So they're a very aggressive corporation. Where I saw JCPenney stuck in that one little box, which was their retail marketing, but then they didn't have any real new products. That differ. There was no unique selling proposition of products that were in their store. And I was going like pricing strategies, but the flip side would be somebody like Best Buy. I used to joke that Best Buy was the Amazon showroom. Sure. But they've really recovered, and they did, and have figured out a way to function, even though in many cases I can go look at the product and go buy it on Amazon. Right. But they seem to at least be figuring out some ways to remain viable in the world today.
John, I have a question, please. In the view of what we just discussed about JCPenney and other stocks, in appearance of new giants such as Amazon, what do you think about the old strategy of buying and holding stocks, which made some people like Warren Buffett great, if not the greatest investors of all time? Do you still subscribe to validity of this theory?
Personal opinion is, I would say, most people, and I think unfortunately many financial advisors violate the first rules. They don't know why they buy it, or they don't know why they buy a stock other than it's hot. And so they don't understand why they should sell it. I think buy and hold for most people is a better strategy. It's what I see people who trade, unless they're very professional at doing it, somebody like yourself. They just don't do it very well because they don't understand what they're doing. They certainly can't do the kind of analysis that they should be doing to make those decisions. They're doing it as a sideline, and it's too emotional. You really have to be able to take much of the emotion out of, otherwise you constantly fall under the buy high, sell low pattern.
You see, the problem with buying stocks, which is a trade with General Electric now, that all IBM TV know about it and discussing. When I decided to take the trade and acquire 5,000 shares of General Electric, before I did that, of course, I studied the stock, the company, but I don't like to spend a lot of time on it because regardless how much you learn about the company and what they're doing, first of all, if you're doing really well, you will become disgusted with the company and you'll never touch its stock. Number two, even if you do all that, all you will achieve, you will just know just exactly as much as any other trader. So what's your advantage? Why would you spend 2.5 hours to do all that? It doesn't make any sense. So you study chart, you have basically your view on the market in whole, on General Electric. It's part of the Dow Jones still. Okay, so you think if market will continue to go higher, probably the General Electric, it's now, when I bought it, it was $6.50, so maybe it will go to $7.50, maybe even $8. It will never go back to $36 like it was 3 years ago, all that. So basically, here is a trade. I'll sell some covered calls. Okay, so I'll squeeze a couple thousand, probably $5,000 out of it. That's it. But The final question before I enter the trade is, if I'm buying 5,000 shares of General Electric, it means somebody sells to me 5,000 shares. Why this person or whoever it is, mutual fund or investment fund or hedge fund, or who knows it, I'm not even curious to find out, but I'm curious to find out why they decided to sell, and I'm taking the trade and I'm buying, because there is a sucker born every minute, as we know, and I just don't want to be one of those suckers. So I have to really answer this question in a satisfying way before I'll take the trade. So most likely, maybe they bought it at 495 and they decided to get out because it was already made. Maybe they discovered some other interesting opportunities, maybe to buy Alibaba or maybe Amazon or maybe some other interesting stock. Like I love personally Netflix, Nvidia is fantastic stock, or so on. So before going to General Electric, of course, I would have to spend some time and wrestle with this painful decision to buy the shares.
Yeah, I think every one of those become a difficult decision. Yes, Sharif, Dr. Sharif.
I just want to know one of the different aspect, because Sasha has a very good analysis on the stock market and this why they buy, how they buy, and he has his own strategy. I want to know. Let's say Saudi Aramco. Saudi Aramco is one of the biggest company, and financially they are very capable organizations, and they are getting support by the Saudi government and many more things. Yes, but my objective is that, let's say I'm very new, and suddenly I saw that Saudi Aramco come to the market with their IPO. And how I understand, let's say I'm giving you this is situation that Saudi Aramco come. So how do I understand the Saudi Aramco situations, and should I buy this stock or not? What's your aspect?
You're asking me?
I'm asking about Saudi Aramco stock. Like example, I'm a new in this industry and I want to buy, and I know that Saudi Aramco is a very good company. This that their financial strength is very good. Should I buy this company share or not?
Personally, I wouldn't touch it. Of course, I would at least wait a little bit until it will settle in some kind of a trading pattern, which would give me some hints when to buy,
Mhm.
when to sell, maybe even sell it short, maybe to use
Mhm.
options here. But I want to see pattern. I just don't see. Um, I mean, I just wouldn't even consider. I wouldn't even take a look. I wouldn't spend even 3.5 minutes of my time to even make a decision on that one. What about you,
Mhm.
Joe?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of difficult on each one of those. For those who've just joined us, this is IBM TV Financial Friday. We're going to wrap up a little early today because the markets are closed. But so we want to thank our special guest, John Power, CPA from Bismarck, Alexander Starr, who runs the investment show on Wednesday, and Dr. Sharif from Malaysia. We'd like to thank everybody for watching Financial Friday, and we will see you guys all next week. So thank you guys very much for coming, and hopefully we'll be able to see everybody next week. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.